Good morning. This is Gary Adams with the National Cotton Council, and I would like to welcome everyone to the National Cotton Council's conference call and webinar regarding the recently passed seed cotton program. With the new program taking effect for this year's crop, we felt that it was important to disseminate the information as quickly as possible, and conducting a series of calls and webinars is the best way to do that. I'll remind everyone that the conference lines will be in lecture mode until time for the question and answer. Also, for any of you that may have problems with Adobe Connect, the presentation that we will be going through is posted on the National Cotton Council's website, as well as a summary report. By way of background, you'll recall that on February 9th, Congress passed a budget agreement that included a supplemental disaster provisions for agriculture. In addition, legislation included the seed cotton program, as well as provisions to improve the safety net for dairy. The seed cotton program represents the culmination of more than 2 years of concerted effort by the U.S. cotton industry to improve the support program by authorizing cotton's eligibility for the PLC and ARC programs within the 2014 Farm Bill. I want to recognize the diligent efforts of the staff of the National Cotton Council, as well as the numerous cotton industry associations that worked hard to achieve this outcome. Dedicated industry leadership was also critically important in these efforts, and to those I offer my thanks. Achieving this policy would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of Congressman Mike Conaway, Chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, and Senator Thad Cochran, Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. I also want to pass along the industry's thanks to the members across the Cotton Belt who helped support this program. Before we review the program, let me address the importance of establishing a seed cotton policy in advance of the new Farm Bill, and why it was necessary to convert generic acres beginning in 2018 rather than 2019. Cotton producers needed an improved safety net as soon as possible, and the Supplemental Disaster Bill was the latest legislative vehicle to accomplish that outcome. The Supplemental Disaster Bill provided an opportunity to add additional baseline funding through the changes for dairy and cotton. Adding new money would not have been possible in the Farm Bill process, and addressing cotton and dairy now will make the upcoming Farm Bill development a bit less difficult. Generic base acres are cotton base acres from the previous Farm Bill and were intended as a temporary measure to keep some support on those acres until a new cotton policy was implemented in Title I. The conversion of generic base in 2018, 1 year ahead of the new Farm Bill, helped ensure that the budget resources currently associated with generic acres would remain within the new cotton program and with other crops that establish base acres by converting generic base to crop-specific bases. If the development of cotton policy and the conversion of generic base had occurred in the context of the upcoming Farm Bill debate, there would have been many more interests involved who wanted a portion of those generic base acre payments to go to their priorities instead of to a cotton program. Strengthening the cotton program and converting generic base acres so that all payment acres are now decoupled from plantings should make it easier to defend and maintain the support levels and payment limit provisions that are critically important to Southern agriculture. With the approval of these provisions, the agriculture committees are now in a much better position to move forward with the development of the new Farm Bill. In the upcoming Farm Bill, cotton will be focused on maintaining the seed cotton policy. The industry is also seeking improvements to the operation of the marketing loan program, enhancements in cotton flow, and increasing support for the U.S. textile industry. We anticipate the House Agriculture Committee will try to pass their version of the new Farm Bill out of committee by the end of the first quarter. The Senate Agriculture Committee is likely to follow shortly after. The committee's bills must then be approved by their respective bodies and then work out any differences in conference. This needs to occur by September 30th, when some provisions of the existing Farm Bill begin to expire. Given the numerous attacks on agricultural policy by outside interest groups from across the political spectrum, it is critical that all of U.S. agriculture work together to defend the Farm Bill. Let me thank you for your participation in the conference call and webinar. Let me also thank those that are hosting groups at your office. I would ask to give us an idea of the number of people that we are reaching. Those that are hosting groups, if you can give us a rough idea of the number of people at your location by typing the number of attendees into the webinar's chat window. We will take questions at the end of the presentation with the webinar chat window first, and then open the conference lines. If you have any follow-up questions or need any additional information after the webinar, you are always welcome to contact your NCC Member Services representative or contact myself or any of the staff in the Memphis or Washington office. I will now introduce Dr. Jody Campeacci, the Council Vice President of Economic and Policy Analysis, and she will lead us through today's presentation. So, Jody, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so we'll go over the 2018 Seed Cotton Program information, and just as a reminder, the information presented today is based on NCC's review of the legislative language. Final details are subject to change based on USDA's interpretation of the language and implementation. Seed cotton is designated as a covered commodity eligible for Title I Price Loss Coverage, PLC, and Agricultural Risk Coverage, ARC, programs in the 2014 Farm Bill, beginning with the 2018 crop. Seed cotton refers to unginned upland cotton, and this includes both lint and cottonseed. The reference price is set at 36.7 cents per pound. The price floor is set at 25 cents per pound. To determine the seed cotton marketing year average price, a weighted average is used of the upland cotton lint price and cottonseed price. So we take the upland cotton lint production times the lint marketing year average price plus the U.S. cottonseed production times the cottonseed marketing year average price, and then we divide that by the total lint and cottonseed production. So it's weighted based on annual shares of production, which means that this will change each year, and as we move throughout the marketing year, USDA will have a new monthly estimate, and we can update our current estimate for the year each month. However, just keep in mind it's not final until the end of the marketing year. The marketing year runs from August 1st to July 31st. USDA publishes the monthly estimates, like I just mentioned, throughout the year, and the final estimate is usually published between maybe late September, early October. Okay, so let's walk through an example. Assume that the upland cotton lint marketing average price is 69 cents a pound. Assume that the cottonseed marketing average price is 0.075 cents or 150 a ton. These numbers for the upland cotton lint production and the U.S. cottonseed production, these are the current USDA estimates for the 2017-2018 crop year. And this latest estimate is based on USDA's report that came out in February. So we take U.S. cotton lint production plus cottonseed production, and then we get our total pounds of production. Okay, now based on the formula that we just went through, we multiply the production of lint times the lint price plus the production of cottonseed times the seed price, divide those by the total cottonseed plus lint production in pounds, and go down to the very bottom, and we end up with the weights of 0.423, 0.4233, and then 0.5767. So 0.4233 would be the weight for the lint. We're going to multiply that by the lint price. 0.5767 is going to be the weight for cottonseed, and we multiply that by the cottonseed price. And we get a combined seed cotton marketing year average price of 33.53 cents. So just keep in mind, as I mentioned previously, this marketing year average price will change each year. It will not be final until the end of the marketing year. The marketing year average prices are published by NASS, and they're based on monthly surveys of prices received that NASS conducts. Now, just an example to kind of see where seed cotton prices would have been over time compared to lint prices and seed cotton prices. So as you can see in the middle, the blue line would be seed cotton. Now, again, it's a weighted average of lint and cottonseed. And one thing I want to point out is if you take a look at, you'll see the very last dot on there would be 2017. You can see that the lint price increased from 2016 to 2017, but you can see that the cottonseed price decreased. So when you combine those together, you actually get a small decrease in the seed cotton price. So again, weighted average of both, one could be higher for a certain year, one could be lower, but you have to look at the total seed cotton price to determine where the price is going to go, if it's going to be higher or lower. Okay, and just to illustrate the calculation of the seed cotton marketing your average price. And one thing I want to point out is on our website, we actually have an Excel version of this spreadsheet. So you can go in and look at the numbers a little bit closer using that spreadsheet. But let's look at the example based on the prices that I just used. So we have a lint marketing your average price of 69 cents a pound. We have a cottonseed marketing your average price of $150 a ton. And if you look down where those two numbers meet on the spreadsheet, you'll see the seed cotton marketing your average price that was just calculated in the example of 33 cents. And you know, this is easy if you go look at the spreadsheet. If you just want to get an idea of, okay, let's say that the lint marketing your average price is 61 cents. And let's say that the cottonseed marketing your average price is 180 a ton. So you go look on the spreadsheet where those two numbers meet, and you get a seed cotton marketing your average price of 31 cents. Okay, next would be the calculation of the seed cotton payment yield. The seed cotton yield is equal to the lint yield plus the cottonseed yield, or it's also equal to 2.4 times the lint yield. Since the cottonseed yield is determined as 1.4 times the lint yield, that's how we come up with 2.4 times the lint yield. And I'll explain this a little bit better in the next slide where we walk through some actual numbers. Now, the 1.4 is consistent with the approach used in crop insurance. So the upland cotton lint payment yield will be the higher of the CCP lint yield or the updated lint yield. Producers will have a one-time opportunity to update the payment yield for upland cotton based on 90% of the average of 2008 to 2012 actual yields, not counting years in which cotton was not grown. And this is consistent with the yield update option that was available for other commodities in the 2014 Farm Bill. Okay, so now the example of the payment yield. So let's say we have a lint yield of 800 pounds per acre. So to determine the pounds of cottonseed per acre, we take 1.4 times 800. We get 1,120 pounds per acre. To get the seed cotton payment yield, we're going to add the cotton lint yield and the pounds of cottonseed. So that would be 800 plus 1,120. We get 1,920 pounds per acre, which is also equal to 2.4 times 800. So you can kind of see where the 2.4 comes from. Next would be the seed cotton PLC payment rate. The payment is made when the reference price exceeds the higher of the marketing your average price and the price floor. The seed cotton PLC payment rate is equal to the reference price minus the higher of the marketing your average price and the price floor. If the seed cotton payment rate would be equal to 0 if the seed cotton marketing your average price is greater than 36.7. The seed cotton PLC payment is paid on 85% of the farm's decoupled seed cotton base. The seed cotton PLC payment, the rate per base acre would be the PLC payment rate times the payment yield times 0.85. And again, if you look at the PLC programs in the 2014 Farm Bill for other commodities, the calculation in this part right here would be exactly the same as the other commodities. It's the PLC payment rate times the payment yield times 85% of base acres. Okay, so let's walk through an example we'll use the marketing your average price that we calculated a few slides back, 33.53 cents. Seed cotton PLC payment rate would be the reference price, which is 36.7, minus the higher of the seed cotton marketing your average price, which is 33 cents, or the price floor, which is 25 cents. Since 33 cents is higher than 25 cents, we're going to take 36.7 minus 33.53. We get a payment rate of 0.0317. We're going to multiply that by the seed cotton yield, which was 1,920 as we went through in the previous example. We're going to multiply that by 0.85. Then you get a payment per base acre of just under $52. Okay, so seed cotton base acres will be established through the conversion of generic base acres. Generic base acres are not in effect beginning with the 2018 crop. For any farms with generic base and no covered commodities, including seed cotton, planted 2009 through 2016, those generic base acres will become unassigned crop base and ineligible for PLC and ARC. For all other farms with generic base, producers will have a choice of one of the following options to convert generic base to seed cotton and other covered commodity base acres. Option 1, seed cotton base equals the higher of 2009 to 12 average seed cotton plantings, or 80% of generic base, and the total cannot exceed total generic base. Any unconverted generic base becomes unassigned crop base and ineligible for PLC and ARC. Option 2, all generic base would be converted proportionally based on 2009 to 2012 average plantings of seed cotton and other covered commodities. So option 2 would be consistent with the choices in the 2014 Farm Bill for base other than generic base, whenever the 14 Farm Bill was passed. Okay, so let's walk through a couple of examples of the conversion of generic base acres. So in this example, total generic base is 500 acres. 2009 to 12 average planted acres is cotton, 300 acres, corn, 200, peanuts, 200, soybeans, 100. So we have total covered commodities planted of 800 acres. Okay, so the two options. Option 1, seed cotton base would equal the higher of the 2009 to 12 average planted cotton acres of 300, or 80% times the 500 generic base, which is 400. So in this example, 400 is the highest number, so seed cotton base would be 400, unassigned base would be 100. Okay, option 2. The producer could decide to allocate 500 acres of generic base to the following crops. We take the ratio of crops planted from 2009 to 2012 from the previous slide. So cotton, 300 acres were planted, so we're going to take 300 divided by the 800 total covered commodities times the 500 acres of generic base. We're going to do the same for corn, peanuts, and soybeans. So we end up with 187 acres of cotton, 125 corn, 125 peanuts, 62 soybeans. So total allocated base acres would equal the 500 acres of generic base. So this option would be for someone who would like to have base other than seed cotton base, would like to gain more corn base, peanut base, soybean base, whatever the crops are planted. So let's move along to another example that's slightly different. Okay, in this example, total generic base would be 500 acres. 2009 to 12 average planted acres are cotton, 500, wheat, 200, sorghum, 100, and this would be total covered commodities of 800 acres. Okay, so seed cotton base would equal the higher of 2009 to 12 average planted cotton acres, which is 500, or 80% times the 500 acres of generic base, which is 400. So in this example, the higher number is the 2009 to 12 average planted cotton acres of 500. Unassigned base would therefore be 0. Or option 2, allocate the 500 acres to the following crops of cotton, wheat, and sorghum. And you can see that the 500 acres of generic base would be allocated among those 3 crops. Okay, the next example, total generic base is 500, 2009 to 12 average planted acres, cotton is 600, corn is 200, total covered commodities of 800. Okay, seed cotton base would equal the higher of 2009 to 12 average planted cotton acres, which is 600, 80% times the 500 acres of generic base, which is 400. However, seed cotton base cannot be greater than generic base. So the maximum amount of seed cotton base that you could get under option 1 would be 500. The unassigned base would be 0. Or, of course, option 2, allocate to cotton and corn, because those are the commodities planted from 2009 to 2012. Okay, the last example, generic base is 500, 2009 to 12 average planted acres, cotton is 100 acres, corn is 100, and in this example we're going to say alfalfa, which is a non-covered commodity, of 600 acres. So when we add up total covered commodities, it's only 200 acres because we're only adding cotton and corn. So seed cotton base equals the higher of 9 to 12 average planted acres, which is 200. 80% times 500 generic base is 400. So seed cotton base would be 400. Unassigned base would be 100. Option 2 would allocate 500 acres of generic base to cotton and corn. So you can see, even though only 200 acres of covered commodities were planted, we're still allocating the full 500 acres of generic base. So you end up with 250 acres of cotton and 250 acres of corn. Okay, so now I'm going to walk through a couple of examples on the seed cotton PLC payment calculation. And I also want to point out, as I mentioned earlier on the price slide, we have this spreadsheet available on our website. If you would like to go and look at this, you can actually change the Lint payment yield, which would be that number at the top in red on this example at 600. You can change that number and the spreadsheet will automatically recalculate for you. And that would be the only number that you can change on the spreadsheet. All the calculations are done. It's already multiplied by 85% in the spreadsheet. Okay, so using the prices in the example that we just went through, we have a Lint marketing average price of 69 cents, a cottonseed marketing average price of 150 a ton, and a Lint payment yield of 600. Based on the example that we went through earlier on how to calculate the seed cotton payment yield, we have 600 times 2.4. You can see the seed cotton payment yield will be 1,440 pounds. So in this example, the payment per base acre for PLC would be $39. Okay, let's move to a slightly higher payment yield. Okay, let's look at a payment yield of 800. And again, 800 times 2.4 would be 1,920 pounds per acre for the seed cotton payment yield. Using those same prices, we have a PLC payment per base acre of $52. Okay, same example, but let's look at a Lint payment yield of 1,000. 1,000 times 2.4 is 2,400. So that would be the seed cotton payment yield. In this example, the payment per base acre would be $65 an acre. And one thing to point out about the spreadsheet is as you go across it, you can see as you get to higher Lint prices and higher cottonseed prices, you'll see that the payments are 0. So you can kind of tell as you go across there what prices you are protected at. And again, because it's based on a combination of the lint price and cottonseed price, that combination varies. So, for example, if we look at 77-cent lint marketing or average price and $150 a ton for cottonseed, you'll see the payment is zero. But we could come over to a lint price of 71 cents and a cottonseed price of $230 a ton, and you'll see that the payment is zero there. So again, it really depends on the combination of the two, and you'll see that when you get into the spreadsheet and kind of work with it a little bit. Okay, so other details would be that for the 2018 crop, the Stax insurance product may be purchased for acres of upland cotton planted on a farm enrolled in the Seed Cotton PLC or ARC program. Stax must be purchased prior to the sales closing date. Restrictions will apply in later crop years past 2018. Now, for 2018, keep in mind, you may purchase Stax if you do so before the sales closing date. The non-recourse marketing assistance loan for upland cotton lint remains unchanged in the 14 Farm Bill, with an upland cotton loan rate of 52 cents per pound for the 2018 crop. PLC and ARC payments for seed cotton are subject to the payment limit of $125,000 that also applies to other covered commodities other than peanuts. Slide wasn't wanting to advance. Okay, so the producer landowner decisions. Landowners will choose to update payment yields if the updated yield is greater than the CCP yield. Landowners will also choose between base update options. And I wanted to make sure to mention landowners here because this follows the same procedure that FSA used at the beginning of the 2014 Farm Bill when signatures of landowners were required for the payment yield update and the base update options. Producers will choose between PLC or ARC. Producers will make a PLC ARC election for the 2018 crop year on each farm with seed cotton base. Just to be clear, this is just for the 2018 crop year. If all producers on a farm fail to make a unanimous election for PLC or ARC, the farm will be assumed to choose PLC for seed cotton. Now, later we will provide examples of ARC and we will put those on our website. Another thing to mention is that FSA has not announced the sign-up date yet, which means that they are not quite ready for producers to come in and start making these elections. But you can go ahead and start thinking about the data that you needed at the beginning of the 14 Farm Bill and the decisions that you will need to make. So as we go forward, of course, gather some of the similar information that you needed for the beginning of the 14 Farm Bill. This would include yield records from 2008 to 2012. This would include planting history from 2009 to 2012. And at the appropriate time, check with your local FSA office for additional information. And to stay informed, you can check our website, www.cotton.org, and we will be providing updated information, and we'll also update the summary sheet that you may have seen as well. So I just want to thank you for participating in the webinar, and thank you for your support of the National Cotton Council. So now we will open up the chat window to questions.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode. The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Jody, for the review of the seed cotton program. We are watching our chat windows for any questions that you would like to pose. We also have removed the conference lines out of lecture mode. And one of the questions we had about the presentation being available on our website, yes, it is available. So if you go to www.cotton.org, you're going to see in that first homepage carousel, you're going to see a couple of different links that will take you to one, information about the webinars, and then the other about the seed cotton information and where it can be accessed. And so the summary paper, the matrix, and the PowerPoint can all be downloaded from that website. Another question came through on updates for farms without generic base. Not under this program. I think it's important to point out that this the update here is applicable only to the farms with generic acres, and even then it only applies to the generic base acres on those farms. So this is fairly direct in terms of looking at strictly farms with generic, and then also looking at just reallocating those generic and converting them into decoupled covered commodity bases, whether seed cotton or whether seed cotton and some others. So that's all that's applicable here. Anything that would happen on a broader basis would be covered by the next farm bill, but we're not hearing. But even having said that, we're not hearing much talk that's being considered either.
Does anyone have any additional questions?
I'm sorry. One other question came in on the chat line about stacks availability. As Jody mentioned, in 2018, a producer can do both and can purchase stacks on any acres that are planted on a farm enrolled in the PLC or ARC program. The intent would be, though, and what this language spells out for 2019 and beyond, is that a producer will have to then choose between enrolling in the PLC ARC program or purchasing stacks on those acres, not able to do both. So in 2019 and beyond, we anticipate that'll be carried forward. That restriction that's included in this language will be carried forward in the new Farm Bill, and will not be able to have both. But for 2018, certainly something to look at given the crop insurance price election. The question on what happens to unassigned base. Very good question. The legislative language directs USDA to maintain those base acreage records, so maintain records on the unassigned base, and then I think the question will be whether or not in the next Farm Bill there's any flexibility or ability to perhaps bring those base acres back into eligibility for the payments. That's unclear at this point. I think that probably becomes a budget-driven issue to some degree. So the records are retained, so that there's an accounting of how many unassigned base acres are on each farm. And also to clarify, I think want to stress the unassigned acres that come about.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The wireless customer you called is not available at this time. Please try your call again later. Announcement 1, switch 170-3.
Sorry, we were getting some feedback there.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The wireless customer you called is not available at this time. Please try your call again later. Announcement 1, switch 170-3.
I'd ask on your end if you're not, if you don't have a question, you might put your phone on mute. One of the things that when we create unassigned base on generic for no crop being planted for 2009 to 2016, that's only ineligibility for the seed cotton PLC ARC program. If that farm had other covered commodity bases on it, then it would still be receiving PLC ARC payments if it's currently enrolled in another commodity. It's only on the seed cotton PLC ARC.
Okay, one other question that we have is, how did you come up with the cottonseed price? And so I'm assuming you're talking about the NASS marketing your average cottonseed price. So this is based on NASS survey that's filled out from GINS. And of course, it kind of works similar to other NASS marketing your average prices. It's a weighted monthly average that's calculated throughout the marketing year. And just to be a little bit more clear as well, for all of the PLC and ART programs, they're all based on a NASS marketing your average price that's published on the USDA website. So to be consistent with other commodities, the price for lint and for cottonseed used in the seed cotton program had to also be NASS marketing your average prices.
We have another question come in about an idea on the timeline of when this will need to get done, assuming there in terms of USDA implementation. We know that USDA is already looking at implementation of the program. The legislative language actually talks about a 90-day window for USDA to implement the program. So it does put some timelines on the department. And we know they want to move through this quickly because it does apply for this year's crop. So I think as we get into that 90-day timeline, we're going to start getting more details available. Obviously, it'll take some time, but again, a lot of the procedures are very similar to what USDA went through in implementing the 2014 Farm Bill. So we hope that helps out as well.
Feel free to ask any other questions on the conference line as well.
I think we've got another question coming in here that's... The question was the default option for assigning base acres which is the default option between option 1 and 2. And let me check that. I think that's going to be the default option is going to be option, what we refer to as option 1, that was the higher of the plantings or the 80%. But we will we'll double check that to verify. I know we've got some other questions that are coming in on the chat window. If there's any on the conference line, certainly glad to entertain those as well. So a question came in terms of FSA being trained to implement the program. You know, that's hard to say. Again, we're looking at that 90-day window. That's going to be an aggressive window for FSA. I would think there's probably going to be it's going to take probably several weeks before the actual training material's there. And then going back to that earlier question on the default option for the base acres being assigned, it is, as we went back through the legislative language, it is going to be that higher of your 2009 to 12 plantings or the 80%. So it essentially gets converted to a combination of converted to seed cotton base, and then it's either going to be your plantings or an unassigned or the 80% and unassigned. And again, if plantings meet or exceed your base, then there is no unassigned.
Still have plenty of time if you have additional questions. Again, you can use the chat window, or we've also opened up the conference line, so feel free to ask all the questions you want.
And some things to keep in mind, too, as you look at this, these decisions with FSA, you might verify power of attorney with the FSA office.
So one thing I'll mention as well is that we are going to post a document with frequently asked questions and answers on our website. And we'll also have a YouTube video going through all of this again as well, in case you want to go over it again. But we'll include questions and answers from this webinar as well as our other ones, so that you can go back and review those. Another thing I want to mention is that we do have another date for the webinar of Monday, February 26th, and it's from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And this is for all states, in case you wanted to see it again or someone missed it and they want to go back and watch it.
And we got a question about farms that may not have been worked in the time frame about the information from FSA. I would assume FSA still has the data on those farms, even though they may have changed hands from where we are today relative to the 2009 through 12 period. A question regarding if a producer has the power of attorney, can they make the decisions for the landlord or the changes?
Depends on the power of attorney. That power of attorney, this is Craig, that power of attorney option depends on which power of attorney option that you have at the FSA office. So you need to double check and make sure that you have a power of attorney for all decisions. We're assuming that the power of attorney would be in place for the seed cotton decisions, but we'll have to wait till the final rule comes out to know if that's actually the case. But that should be the case if you have power of attorney for the landowner.
And the question came up as well about would the current one be sufficient to make those elections on behalf of the landowner.
Go ahead. Someone have a question on the conference line?
And then we had a question about peanut-based acreage remaining on the farm if you haven't planted peanuts in recent years. Yes is the answer to that question. So any farms that have those covered commodity decoupled bases, whether it be peanut-based, corn-based, soybean-based, those base acreages are not going to, those existing base acreages will not change regardless of what crop you have or haven't planted. Now, you will have the case that obviously if you choose that option 2 and choose to reallocate, then there's an opportunity to add some of those covered commodity bases to the base acres. But given your regardless of your planting history, the existing decoupled base will not change. Okay, and there was another question about it's a rather long URL. We can try to put about where the PowerPoint will be posted. We'll put this into the chat window as well. You can type this in. And then the information that will need to be proved to be prove updated yields. Again, I think this will go back to probably the same information that was proved to updated yields back in the implementation of the 2014 Farm Bill. I do think there was, there's yield records on with FSA, but there's also the yield records with risk management agencies. So that will be a source. Will be your crop insurance. The same yield numbers that went into your crop insurance will be there. Also in the, I know the question here in webinar windows, we've added the URL of where you can exactly get the PowerPoint presentation.
We'll type and then put it in the chat into that.
And push that?
You should probably just push enter. Like if you type something, you should just enter. Just go and do it.
And if you have any questions or have any difficulty navigating our webpage, just give us a call and we can help you.
You can spell it right.
Are there any other questions on the conference line?
Base.
That's some other questions being typed in right now.
Okay.
If you
And we've got some others that are being typed in, so we appreciate the questions being posed through the webinar.
get all. How do you spell signature?
S-I-G.
Is that owner?
Landowner, A-W-N-E-R.
Signatures.
S-I-G.
Yeah, while y'all are thinking about other questions, this is Craig. Obviously, we're providing this information based on our understanding of how the legislation is written. It's ultimately up to the Farm Service Agency to do the implementation rules. So those are the official rules. We'll be working closely with FSA to make sure they follow the intent of the law. But so obviously once those rules come out and the sign up is announced, then you'll have the ultimate implementation procedure.
N-A-T-U right here.
Yeah, and a question the audio comes through the conference line, not through the Adobe Connect.
Yeah. You should have looked at that.
Yeah, the reason for that was because we'd get feedback on the conference line was the reason we didn't open up the audio on the Adobe Connect.
A question about what happens to generic base if we fail to get all landowner signatures. I think in that case, as we were looking at it, it's going to go to a default option, which would be based on records, be the option one, either the 12 plantings or the 80% would be converted to seed cotton base, and then the rest would become, if there's any excess, would become unassigned base.
We have about 15 more minutes in case you have more questions.
Greg, how
Yes.
do you go about finding a yield for farms that you were not working and they probably have not had to turn in to FSA?
Well, I would think this sounds like Jerry Hamill, but I would think you could also fall back on RMA yield records, but that'll probably be made clear in the sign up. And the other issue would be we'll have to check and make sure how USDA handled that in the 2014 sign up, because it's basically going to be the same procedure they did for other commodities. But I think RMA yields will be sufficient. We are assuming that to be the case, but that'll be late. That'll be specified in the implementation regs.
And I think there's also, for missing data, there was also some, the ability to use some percent of the county average yield as well.
Yeah,
so correct. They had, in the previous implementation, they had,
Okay.
they had to substitute in some county yields. Now, we've got a question that came up.
Real concern here, and I thank you here.
Okay. And we'll continue also to research some of these questions. And as Jody mentioned, one of the documents we'll be updating on a regular basis will be a frequently asked questions. So the questions that came to us from this session as well as subsequent webinars will be compiled with answers into a document that we keep updated on our website.
Yeah, there was a question that came up on the chat line about privacy of records. The generic base for every FSA farm number is within the FSA office. So the current operator should have access to that base, that generic base acreage, which would be the acreage that would be applicable to seed cotton and other commodities. So I don't imagine there's going to be any privacy issues for the landowner to access that information at the local FSA office.
Thank you.
We don't want to cut off any questions, but we certainly want to be respectful of your time as well and answer any questions you have, but also you've still got the day in front of you. We certainly appreciate you joining us this morning, and again, for the opportunity to talk about the seed cotton program. I think it's a very positive step forward in terms of positioning us for the next farm bill. We think it has the potential to be an effective safety net and provide support when prices move lower. So from that respect, feel very positive about it, but we still got a lot of work left to do in terms of securing and maintaining a safety net through the next farm bill. With that, thank you all very much for your attendance, and wish you all the best in 2018.